So, hi everyone. Before I start today's little ditty, I just want to pay tribute to Sidney Poitier. He died yesterday, 94 years old. He was the first black actor to win an Oscar. He was 94. He did some great movies, The Defiant Ones with Tony Curtis, To Sir with Love. They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. We all really liked him. He actually looks a lot like my dad. My dad used to model himself on him, and he was a bit of a ladies' man. He said that's because he looked like Sidney Poitier. That's how he got all the women. This is him and his daughters. He's got 4 daughters. That's just 2 of them, but beautiful kids, beautiful wife. And it's very sad that he's gone, but rest in peace. He had a good life. 94. Wow. Anyway, so today I'm going to talk about where I'm from in Essex. There was a murder that took place. 3 guys in December. It was December 10th, I believe, or the 9th. And they were found in a Range Rover on a dark country lane in Rettendon, Essex, which is not too far from, where I lived. Now, the reason that this happened, well, I'll go into that in a minute, but these are the guys that were killed, Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. And what happened was these guys had gotten into the ecstasy business, and they basically, well, especially Pat Tate was, he was a beast of a man, and he would... they were their own best customers in the end. They were taking all kinds of drugs, and they got very vicious, lethal, torturing people. They murdered a couple of people, and the old timers that were around had enough of them and said they got to go, and go they did. Now, Essex is just on the outskirts of London, and so a lot of people that were involved in crime kind of moved out to Essex, because the East End, where I was raised, was the police were coming down on people, and so the criminals decided to move out a little bit. Essex was maybe like a 15-20 minute drive down the road, but it sounds like it was miles away. No, it wasn't. You had easy access to London, so it was the perfect place. Now, you may all know this person. I don't know if you do. This is Nigel Benn. Now, Nigel and me grew up together. In fact, his brother used to chase me through the park every day on my way to school. His family lived on the other side of the park, and he was always at our house. When it got into boxing, and he won he was the world super middleweight champion. He did fight here in the States, I want to say in Vegas, and he did pretty well. His son now's Connor Benn. He's now a fighter, but this was back in the day when Nigel was on his heyday, and he was very, very friendly, very close with Tony Tucker and Patrick Tate. And the reason that, because they were his minders, whenever he did appearances or whatever, they were like bodyguards, if you will. And so, but he was very close with them. And as he did actually do an interview on it, which I might try and find and play tomorrow. But it really upset him when they were killed. And he talked about, the murders, and he's lucky actually that he wasn't in that car. He really is very lucky, along with another guy, Carlton Leach. And this is the actual how they were found. They were in a Range Rover. Yeah, it was pretty gruesome, very gruesome, in fact. So let's get on with the story. I'm going to play a little thing I found, like a documentary on it. Hopefully I don't get struck, but you know, it is what it is. Hopefully I won't, so we'll see. So I'm going to share this with you, and it talks about the murders and basically what led up to it, and basically what led up to it was that this particular guy, his name's Andrew Pritchard, who you're going to see in a minute. He was just a regular guy, you know. He had him and his mates. They weren't gangsters. They weren't like criminals per se. They were just like regular people. But, you know, he saw an opportunity. And what he used to do is he would hold raves, which means they would find an old warehouse, whatever it is, and they would announce the party and everyone would show up. You know, thousands of people. They made hundreds and thousands of pounds. And what had happened is once the gangsters got a whiff of that money and they knew there was a lot of money being made, rather than go rob a bank, they would wait and go and rob the raves because they knew the money was there. You know, they would take it out in there was so much money, you know, they'd take it out in rucksacks, that type of stuff. And so what Andrew Pritchard did, he hired Tony Tucker, Patrick Tate, and Craig Wolfe. They had like a security firm, and they hired them to protect them from being robbed. But see, Tony Tucker and Patrick Tate, once they saw how much money was being made, then they wanted in on it, and they got greedy, and it kind of goes from there. And Billy Blundell, they were a large crime family in the East End at that time. He was connected to this as well. But I'm going to play it. I'm going to start it where Andrew Pritchard comes in when they start to get to, you know, the ecstasy part.
Okay. So we knew something was happening.
The pioneer of the new movement was Andrew Pritchard.
The rave scene came about in my very, very late teens, early 20s. A new music had emerged on the scene, was acid house, and a drug had emerged also called ecstasy.
Pritchard began staging illegal parties, which attracted thousands of people to warehouses and open spaces in London and Essex. He didn't pay for the premises, he just turned up, took over, and charged admission. While he didn't provide the ecstasy, Pritchard knew his events depended on the drug.
Without it, there wouldn't have been no parties, and the parties would have been very lame. As I say, if there wasn't a drug dealer in a venue, we'd have to go out and find one. Otherwise, the party would be dead.
People wanted to party, and Pritchard made it happen. He mobilised legions of revellers to descend upon unsuspecting villagers in their thousands. Under pressure from horrified communities, Thatcher's government needed to appear strong. The conservative media joined in the fight. National radio banned acid house music, and newspapers ran sensational headlines. The government tasked Ken Tappenden with the tough job of breaking up the party.
The organisers were better than we were. I only wish I had them as my lieutenants, because they were brilliant. They could organise thousands of people in 2 hours to go from one spot to another. The military can't do that now. The police definitely couldn't do it.
Broadcasting on pirate radio and using newly available mobile phones, Pritchard kept one step ahead of Tappenden's pay party unit. Essex was ideally situated for the raves. Drugs came in from the coast, and in the open fields and derelict buildings, Thatcher's generation partied. Pritchard's illegal events company, Genesis, was going from strength to strength.
The admission would be between £10 and £20 a ticket. You could probably, out of a good event, maybe take 70 to 100 grand in a large warehouse.
By the age of 22, Andrew Pritchard had made his first million.
It was an MTV pop-style lifestyle. It was great. The cars, you know, the clothes, the jewellery, the women, you know, you had a great life. And, you know, every 21-year-old wants to do that.
But you couldn't make this kind of profit without the underworld taking notice. And in the 1980s, armed robbers began to realise there were easier ways of making money than holding up banks.
They knew that if they carried on armed robberies, they're going to get banged up. They're going to get shot on the plot.
To avoid police marksmen, robbers looked for a softer target, and raves were easy pickings.
You didn't see a bank robbery all the time you had acid parties. Never. You didn't have to. If they could go to half a dozen parties on a Friday, Saturday night and walk off with a couple of £100,000, as they did, easy money, isn't it?
Pritchard was taking massive amounts of cash, kept not in vaults and safes, but bin liners and sports bags.
Back then we were wide open, basically. We were vulnerable to all sorts of undesirables. So the choice we had to make was to get the right people to protect us and work with those people in order for our parties to succeed.
The raves were illegal. Pritchard couldn't go to the police or legitimate security firms, so instead he looked for people with violent reputations. They weren't hard to find. West Ham United was the traditional football club of the East End. For the displaced Londoners in Essex, Upton Park Stadium was a symbol of their old heritage. It's peaceful nowadays, but in the 1980s, it was under siege. Every weekend, rival firms of football hooligans orchestrated violence on the terraces. With long-term hooligan Carlton Leach at its heart, West Ham's intercity firm, or ICF, were the most notorious. Football violence was nothing new, but the ICF were different. Embodying the spirit of the age, they were upwardly mobile and ambitious. They were once described as Thatcher's eagles.
You want to be the best, don't you? We all want to be. You want to be tops in life, whatever it is.
They're incredibly sharp and entrepreneurial, and they saw this as an opportunity. Rather than whacking other football fans at the weekend for nothing, they thought, well, if we're going to use muscle and we're going to use reputation, we might just as well get paid for it, which is what they did.
The ICF soon evolved from football hooligans to security entrepreneurs, bouncers and doormen. In the decades that followed, some of them would help to bring violence and bloodshed to gangland Essex. But in 1988, rave organiser Andrew Pritchard simply wanted to protect his profits, and Leach was about to get a piece of the action.
There was a rave thing called Genesis, and did we want to do supply and security for it? £250 a night. What?
Leach already had a part-time job as a doorman, but he'd never seen anything like the raves.
Because we was used to sort of like 100, 200 people in a club. We get quite a lot of trouble when it comes down to drink. And then we're in a warehouse and there's like thousands of people queuing up, people coming in, and it was like just madness.
The architects of the love drug culture were now in bed with men of violence. As far as Tappenden was concerned, Pritchard and his friends were in too deep.
They weren't hard men. They were Jack the Lad. They'd been to Ibiza. They'd stripped down, not worn a shirt for 3 months, liked a bit of money, got with the girls, had a few drugs. They weren't villains, but they were mad to carry on with it, because when the gangsters got into it, you knew then that we were in big trouble.
As profits soared, the ICF tried to take over and began to demand an ever-increasing share of the proceeds.
We started off on wages and then they decided to give us a cut because it was getting so busy that we got a percentage of the door.
In Leach's view, this wasn't extortion, simply an arrangement that worked for both parties.
To bring us on board as a partner was quite a clever move by Andrew and the boys, because that made us part of it. So you're not going to destroy your own thing, you're not going to ruin your own thing, and you're now part of it. I think it was like quarter partners or something like that it worked out, so whatever it was. But you're not going to mess up your own thing.
There's a very fine line between security and extortion. It's a difficult line to draw between actually you pay me for stopping trouble in your club, or if you don't pay me, there will be trouble in your club.
We kind of inadvertently had brought back the protection rackets through the parties. Extortion, in actual fact, in enforcement, became a business again.
Tappenden believed that firms like the ICF had also muscled in on the drugs trade at the events.
You're never going to argue with 10 real good bouncers who are good villains, GBH merchants, attempt murder merchants. You're not going to argue with them when they got a Rottweiler dog on the end of a leash.
The rave scene was descending further and further into the underworld. Tappenden now had Pritchard firmly in his sights. If he mixed with gangsters, he had to be taken down.
They got the mad notion one day to set riot squads out for us. Now, when you got a riot squad of aggressive police who turn up in SPG vans with helmets and shields, you can have a big problem in your hands, because not only have you got maybe 12 or 15 strong doormen who are going to be your first port of entry, who are going to try to stop you, you've got 4,000 or 5,000 people behind now who are also going to be extremely pissed off.
In 3 violent months, the Pay Party unit made 265 arrests and recovered chilling proof that gangsters had infected the rave scene. To avoid the heat, Pritchard slipped quietly out of the country, but the Essex underworld had not seen the last of him. In the 1990s, the underground rave scene exploded onto the mainstream stage. While the government introduced new laws to tackle the warehouse parties, giving police the upper hand, new licensing laws meant Essex nightclubs could stay open late. Keen to cash in on the music's popularity, clubs began to stage legal rave nights of their own. But with raves came drugs, and with the drugs came a bloody gang war. The battlefield would be Basildon, the new town that 50 years earlier had embodied optimism and a bright future. It was this town that gave birth to a gang destined to go down in underworld legend as the infamous Essex Boys. Their leader was Tony Tucker, a security entrepreneur who, like Carlton Leach and the ICF before him, controlled the drugs trade as gatekeeper to the ecstasy-fueled raves. Tucker supplied security for popular Basildon night spot Raquel's. His head doorman was violent offender Bernard O'Mahony. He knew Tucker's dealers and allowed them into the club.
Obviously, at the front here, you'd have all the doormen. They might pretend to search them if the police were here or management were here, and then let them upstairs to sell their wares, basically.
Tucker's approved dealers could operate without interference, and now that drugs, not alcohol, fueled the party, violence became a rare occurrence, which meant the authorities stayed away.
The police just left us to it, really. They used to drive by and wave and, all right, lads, and there was no trouble at all, you know what I mean? We were just left to our own devices, you know what I mean? The lunatics took over the asylum, you know what I mean?
The dealers were getting rich and paid Tony Tucker handsomely for protection within the club. Tucker had quickly become a powerful player and believed he could control the new Essex rave scene. With his newfound wealth and status, he bought expensive property in rural Essex and rubbed shoulders with celebrities. He was personal-minded to middleweight boxing champion Nigel Benn. The other 2 members of the Essex Boys were brutal henchman Craig Rolfe and ambitious villain Pat Tate, a giant with a big personality and a huge ambition.
He was awesome, a big man, 6'4", good-looking man. He had loads of character, charisma. Yeah, you could see, it's just had everything that anyone wanted, do you know what I mean?
But entrepreneur Tate always wanted more.
Tate was this big fucking monster, and he was saying to Tucker, you know, forget selling pills in clubs. You're only making a couple of grand a week or this. He said, I can make you big money.
The Essex drugs market was huge. Ecstasy use was more widespread than ever. But criminals were turning over fortunes from drugs of every description. Cocaine, heroin, and cannabis were rife.
Drugs started to take over from every other form of making money with villainy, in a big way.
Tate saw an opportunity for aggressive expansion. The gang began moving in on other drug businesses. They wanted a larger share of the market and were prepared to use force to take it. And this got them noticed.
A big fish in a small pond, wasn't I? As I see him, you know what I mean?
On one occasion, the gang tried to take a cut of the profit from a cannabis growing operation. What they didn't know was that veteran crook Danny Woolard already had money invested in it.
Met him over the country club, me and my mate. So you ain't getting nothing. And they didn't want to know. Bullies what they could be, my opinion of it. When you bully people, yeah, whatever's coming, don't you?
Woolard's associates left Tate with a broken jaw. He hoped that this would teach the gang a valuable lesson about upsetting fellow criminals.
If you keep catching people and having them over, you're going to get shot or done or something, aren't you? You can't carry on like that.
But the Essex boys didn't learn their lesson. They were out of control. They weren't just dealing drugs, they'd also become heavy users, and friends noticed their behaviour changing.
It gone beyond the realm of just taking a pill and going out and dancing or, you know, the rave. It was going every hardcore drugs, you know what I mean? And they were different people. They were strangers.
Crazed by drug use and a thirst to expand their business, the gang were ruthless to their enemies and associates alike.
If people messed up, the way Tony and Pat were is they had to be punished, you know.
When a small-time seller who worked for them lost money on a drug deal, Tucker and Rolfe made him pay with his life. He was kidnapped and, according to O'Mahony, given the gang's signature treatment.
He used to get a syringe and put steroids in it and other drugs, heroin and things like that. And they used to call it champagne.
The victim was forcibly injected. The cocktail was lethal and he died a horrible death. The message was clear. The gang were not to be crossed.
And when Rolfe went to the back of the car to throw him out the car, they discovered he was dead and just threw him in the ditch like discarded rubbish.
Word of their brutality quickly spread throughout the underworld. But in Essex at that time, police described a curtain of fear, and no one was talking to them. For victims caught up in drugs, the last place you could turn was the police. With the authorities unable to act, it fell to the old criminal establishment to worry about the underworld's new upstarts. Now free after serving his time for the amphetamine conviction, Billy Blundell was not impressed.
Injecting people up and throwing them in ditches to die and things like that, which they did, you know, so they were the worst of the worst. So, you know, you couldn't afford to take chances with them. They had to go.
The Essex boys were making enemies in high places, but one victim would fight back. Pat Tate had begun using heavy drugs, and when his close friend Steve Nipper Ellis confronted him about it, it provoked a bitter feud.
We had this massive argument, and I just remember saying, Pat, you're nothing but a junkie, you're nothing more than a fucking junkie. And he's gone, Nipper, I control the drugs, drugs don't control me. I mean, you're a junkie, you're nothing more than a fucking junkie.
But what Nipper Ellis didn't realise was that in their drug-addled state, Tate and Tucker were looking for any excuse to turn on him.
When they used to come in the club, I could sort of see that there was ill feeling from Tucker towards Nipper.
When Ellis made an offhand remark about Tony Tucker's girlfriend, they had their excuse. Tucker and his henchman Craig Rolfe turned the torture treatment on Ellis.
So I'm doing the hoovering in the hall, front door's open, in walked Tony, he's grabbed me by the throat, he's sort of lifting me up, pushed me down onto the bed, and he sat across me, and he pulled out a meat cleaver, and I'm looking at him, and he's going, your hand or your foot? And I was just thinking, if you cut my foot off, I won't be able to chase you. If you cut my hand off, I can still shoot you. And I'm left-handed, so I held up my right hand, and I just sat there, closed my eyes, thought I'm going to scream, I'm going to cry, it's going to hurt, I'm going to kill you.
Tucker allowed Nipper to keep his hand, but he left the flat with many of his belongings, while Rolfe wiped excrement over the walls. High on drugs, the gang had become monsters. In the days that followed, the gang decided they had let Ellis off lightly. Tucker and Tate told friends they now planned to torture and kill him. But when the gang threatened his family, Ellis decided to strike first. He went to Pat Tate's Basildon home to murder his former friend.
Come up into his back garden, I had the handgun, and I just thought, I'm going to shoot him. As soon as that, I'm going to shoot him. Picked a rock up, threw the rock through the frosted glass. As the glass broke, there was Pat, and he's having a shake, and he's looked like that. What had happened is the gun hadn't fired properly, it had gone click, click, bang, and the third bullet hit me in the arm. All I could hear was screaming, and Pat was on the phone going, please, please. If I've been shot, I've been shot.
Ellis escaped, and Tate was taken to hospital. But the Essex boys had been attacked and wouldn't take it lying down. They drew up a plan to lure Nipper Ellis to the hospital, promising a truce. Tate hid a weapon in the bed sheets and waited for Ellis to arrive.
But fortunately for Nipper, and unfortunately for Tate, fortunately for everyone else, a nurse making up Tate his bed found the gun, called the police, and he was recalled to prison.
Pat Tate had been on parole for a robbery, but possessing a firearm breached his conditions and he was sent back to jail for 18 months. Tate refused to give evidence against Ellis, but the gang had threatened his family, and Ellis's war with the Essex boys was only just beginning.
I had to kill them. That was all I knew. I just lived to kill them.
While in jail, Pat Tate was filmed for a news item about the prison gym. But while playing the model prisoner, he was busy planning his drugs empire. Tate decided that away from the raves, the Essex boys could be making much more money with much less risk.
The trouble is with the rave scene, if you have 500 ecstasy pills, it's no good sitting in the corner of the club with them in a bag and not telling anyone about it. You have to approach as many people as possible to sell as many as you can. And the more people you tell, the more chance you are of being grassed up. So Tate, in his infinite wisdom, thought that was a bad idea.
Tate wanted to move up the underworld ladder and into importing drugs. With the longest coastline of any county and major ports like Tilbury to exploit, it was possible to make a lot of money from smuggling drugs in Essex. A teenager called Leah Betts fell into a coma after taking a single ecstasy pill. The tablet had been bought at Raquel's, but in the club, firmly under the national media spotlight.
Raquel's has been named as the source of the drugs. So I just knew this was going to cause murders, you know what I mean? Or mayhem.
The mainstream drug scene now had a high-profile victim, and the press were demanding answers. What happened behind the doors of Raquel's was now a matter of nationwide public interest.
Rang Tucker, and he just went off the edge, you know what I mean? They're going to be trying importing drugs while under the media spotlight, you know what I mean?
The party was over. Police were now all over the club, warning customers about drugs and determined to discover how an 18-year-old girl had been supplied with ecstasy.
The stage was set, really. Tate was threatening everyone and everything that moved because his plans to be an international drug smuggler were falling apart.
Unable to do business, they pressurised and threatened their underworld partners for money. Then, as Leah Betts lay dying, O'Mahony says the police came to see him. He was about to have to decide whose side he was on.
They said, we're trying to get one of the pills that she'd taken from that batch so we can analyse it and he might be able to help. And I said, I'll get you one. Tucker went mental. He went, you can't be dealing with the police. And I sat at home, and I've got kids, you know what I mean? And I sat there and I thought, well, what's more important? You know, some drug dealer or an 18-year-old girl? And there was no choice. I didn't even think about it hard, do you know what I mean? I just thought, I'll get them one.
To the Essex boys, this was a clear act of betrayal. Dorman O'Mahony was now a marked man and learned from police that the gang were coming after him.
So I got my then partner and two kids and I put them in an hotel at a place called Rettendon. And we stayed there the night.
O'Mahony wasn't the only one under threat. Raquel's regular drug dealer owed the Essex boys money, but with police all over the club, he couldn't work and he couldn't pay his debt. When the Essex boys threatened him and his family, he turned to the one man in Essex he knew could help him.
I said to him, yeah, it can be sorted out. I said, I'll make a phone call now and get it sorted out for you. I made a phone call and a guy turned up on a motorbike with a crash helmet with a 9mm gun.
Blundell provided the terrified dealer with the gun, the chaperone, and some simple advice.
When they turn up, shoot one of them straight in the cobblers. You ain't going to kill them, just shoot them straight in the cobblers. Leave them both.
The dealer declined this helpful offer. Instead, Blundell called the Essex boys to a meeting. Only Tate turned up, and Blundell took the chance to warn him that his association with Tucker was dangerous.
He didn't seem to care much. And I said to him, you know, it's all right him keep blanking and all that, but what happens if someone creeps up behind him and goes bang in the back of the head? if you're with him, you're going to get it as well. You know what I mean? I said, well, if it happens, it happens. 3 days later, it happened.
They were found in this Range Rover. All 3 men were shot through the head at point-blank range. Detectives believe the killings have all the hallmarks of a gangland murder.
You have 26 messages.
Charlie's Colton, can you give us a ring? Cheers, mate.
Tom, can you ring us back if he's dead? We're worried. Will you ring us straight back as soon as you can?
Hi, it's only me. Can you just give us a ring, please? Let us know you're all right. Because at the moment, I think you're dead.
On the night of December the 6th, 1995, the gang were lured to this remote country lane, where they were ambushed by 2 mystery gunmen. O'Mahony thinks he knows how it went down.
The front of the car was adjacent to this tree. The vehicle stopped and there was a 5-bar gate there. And the 4th man in the vehicle said, wait here, I've got the key. As he's kneeling down by the gate, pretending to unlock it, the 5th man was lying over there in the undergrowth. He came to the back of the car. So he shot Rolf behind the ear. He was killed instantly. His hands remain on the steering wheel. His foot's on the brake. He shot Tucker in the side of the face. That exits through his mouth. It doesn't cause any damage to any vital organs, so he's still alive and moaning. And then he shot Tate in the liver. So they can have words with him before they finally kill him. Another man goes around the back of the car and shoots Tate through the near side window. After shooting Tate the second time, they shot Tucker again behind the ear, and they're all dead. The gunmen just turn and walk away, back up the lane to meet the getaway vehicle.
The gunman and the getaway driver escaped, and for 6 months, their identities remained a mystery.
People said to me, who do you think killed? And the police, I said, well, open the Essex phone book and put your finger in. Everyone in there's got a reason, you know what I mean?
So who shot the Essex boys? They'd made many enemies. Danny Woolard had crossed swords with the gang in the past. Was he the Rettendon assassin?
I was there that night. There's nothing to do with me. I was in the Burnt Mill service station going to nick a lorry.
The tiny village was busy that night. Nipper Ellis was also in town. He tried before to kill them. Was he there to finish the job?
Me and somebody else, we were trying to thieve a container with some stuff in it. So I was up near Rettendon. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the shots. I'd like to say I was there, but I was up near Rettendon.
By morning, O'Mahony had checked out of the village hotel. He knew the gang were out to get him. Had he got to them first?
When I got off the train at a place called Southminster, the platform was just loads of police officers. And I thought, these ain't come to check my ticket, do you know what I mean?
Convinced the police would come for him too, Billy Blundell decided to take a holiday.
The newspapers were full of it about Bob Hoskin look-alike who drives a red Rolls Royce, and in the paper said drives around with men with no necks and all this load of nonsense.
But the police didn't come for Blundell. In fact, all 4 men are innocent of the murders. Someone else killed the Essex boys. In May 1996, police were handed a breakthrough when a suspect in a drugs raid turned informant and claimed to be the getaway driver. On his evidence, Michael Steele and Jack Wolmes were convicted of murdering the Essex boys. Steele had been a big-time drug smuggler, one of many people the gang had threatened. Wolmes was his accomplice. The 2 men are now serving life sentences, though the underworld believes that the authorities have the wrong men.
They didn't do it. You know, the guy who put them there had something to gain by doing that. So...
It wasn't them. They were innocent men, mate. They were innocent, believe me.
I know who was there that night, and I know they weren't there.
Veterans of the Essex underworld know to stay silent, but they also hope that with the gang gone, Essex could look forward to a brighter future.
Sad that 3 people died, but whoever did it, you know, did the world a favour, really, because their intent in killing me and killing other people. So good riddance to bad rubbish, really.
15 years on from the fall of the Essex boys, Billy Blundell believes the county is worse than ever. He's retired from crime and now runs a boxing gym, hoping to keep kids off the streets. When he thinks things are bad, you know you're in trouble.
A lot of these young kids running around with guns who really shouldn't have a bow and arrow in their hands, let alone anything else, you know.
Danny Woolard's luck finally ran out, and he spent much of the last 15 years in prison for his involvement in a truck robbery. He's 66 and rues the day he ever joined the underworld.
It's not very nice, though. People have been killed, people are dead, people have been cut, you know. It's not a very nice life. It's a terrible life.
And as for Essex, the land of opportunity, it continues to be plagued by drugs. In 2004, £100 million worth of cocaine was smuggled through Tilbury docks. The man the authorities suspected, the man charged with Britain's biggest ever cocaine bust, was Andrew Pritchard. If convicted, Pritchard faced 40 years in prison. Though he admits to a lucrative career as a smuggler, he denies he ever smuggled cocaine. He has always claimed he was set up by customs and excise. After 2 trials, he was acquitted of all charges. Though he spent 18 months on remand, for an entrepreneur like Pritchard, everything is an opportunity.
With all the free publicity that the press and the media gave to me, I'd be a complete and utter fool if I didn't put my mind to cashing in on it.
Today, Pritchard markets himself as one of Britain's most successful former smugglers. He has written a book, and a film about his career is underway.
To give up smuggling, you'd have to do something better, more profitable and more exciting. And the only buzz that could thrill me was this. Bottom line, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a businessman. Whatever tools I'm given, I work with and make the best of that.
By cashing in on his past criminal career, Pritchard is not alone. The Rettendon shootings have spawned 3 feature films and several books in just 15 years. The old kings of the underworld are swapping their guns for their pens, to the despair of police.
I thought the only way I can have my say is if I put it in my own words, and that's why I started writing, and I see no harm in it. I mean, if the police don't like the books, the best thing to do is stop reading them, you know what I mean?
The entrepreneurial spirit that built Essex is building the legend of the Essex underworld. The Essex boys have entered criminal folklore, but one man wishes he'd killed the men before their legend was born.
Yeah, I do wish I killed them. And that is something I'll probably take to my grave, the fact that I didn't kill them. And the fact that I can't stand here and say, yeah, I did kill them, and I killed them slowly, and I tortured to pieces of shit. They got off light for what they done to other families. I hope I meet up with them in hell.
Okay, so that's the story of the Essex boys. And when they were showing like West Ham, the football ground, I used to actually live around the corner to there. And so every time there was a football match on a Saturday, I mean, oh my God, that place used to be overrun with people and the fighting and the carrying on. But yeah, anyway, so that's the story of them. I think you can see it on YouTube, actually. It's called The Rise of the Foot Soldier. This is Carlton Leach. That's a good one. That's a good one to watch if you want to see it. Bernard O'Mahony, who you saw, he wrote a book, The Essex Boys. There are several movies on YouTube that you can watch for free, and they're really quite good movies. I enjoy them. Anyway, so that's it from me. That's a little bit of where I live, where I come from, and that's it for now. See you all later. Bye.